And approval of the minutes is an action item also.
Yes.
Are we live? Loading? Okay.
We are live.
Good evening. We're at the Governance and Personnel Committee, Thursday, February 9th, starting off at 5:35. I will call the meeting to order. We're going to move on to item number 4 at the moment, which is discussion items, which is an update on the 2023 General Assembly session. And we have Ms. Bachman and also Ms. Boehner here. So I'll turn it over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have much to add before Ms. Boehner. So Ms. Boehner, feel free.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Wheeler and members of the Governance and Personnel Committee. So we have reached crossover. I only have about a couple of weeks left in the session. You'll see from the memo where we are on some key bills, but I want to focus today on what was adopted by the House Appropriations Committee in the budget and adopted by the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee. There were some very interesting items that I think we should know about and discuss. The first one is a very specific language amendment in the House budget that makes the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority part of a study regarding extending Van Buren Road in Prince William County. It's an amendment that was proposed by Delegate Torian. It is a combination of the Secretary of Commerce and Trade and VDOT. It specifically names VDOT, Secretary, the county, the authority, and any private interests that might be helpful in deciding economic development benefits, transportation benefits, safety benefits. Take a look at coming up with financial plan options and a schedule. The report is due this year, August 1, 2023. Ms. Bachman shared with me that actually the authority currently has $8 million program for this project for preliminary engineering in the FY 2022 and 2027 6-year program. So I'm just going to stop it right there. Again, as with all budget amendments, the key is finding out which survive budget conference. So let me stop right there. If there are any questions or thoughts.
Just real quick question. There's really no money attached to that budget amendment. It's just in the budget amendments, correct?
It's correct. It's a language amendment directing an activity to be performed by VDOT and the Secretary of Commerce and Trade. What is interesting is the amendment language is in the section of the budget dealing with commerce and trade and not transportation. I do know that VDOT CFO Laura Farmer last month spoke to wanting to program into the 6-year plan some specific additional money for, as she called it, General Assembly studies that get sent up to VDOT or DRPT or the Port Authority all the time. So I think there's no specific money attached to this because they want to get a better sense of, is there a financial plan? Does the financial plan need to change? What are the benefits of the project? Again, economic development, transportation, and safety.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, keep on moving on. Thank you.
So that leads me to an interesting trend we are now seeing, which is for the second year in a row, actually almost the third year in a row, the General Assembly, with the support of the administration, is dedicating large amounts of general fund money to transportation projects. These are projects that are in a plan somewhere. They may even be in the 6-year plan, but they're not currently scheduled for full funding. And what the General Assembly and administration have agreed to do is essentially, when there are unobligated end of year general fund monies, to dedicate those to put these unique projects. I'll call them that for want of a better word. In 2022, you might remember there's $470 million in general fund dedicated to the 29-mile I-64 gap project between Richmond and the Hampton Roads transportation districts. The funding plan for the project, which is about $750 million, is $470 million from general fund, $100 million from the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. The state has a federal grant request in for $150 million, and the VDOT is already moving forward by setting out a design build RFQ for one segment of this project. In 2023, that unique project is I-81. You will recall that, as in every interstate corridor, VDOT and studied the I-81 corridor, I-95 corridor, I-64 corridor, and the Commonwealth Transportation Board adopted improvement plans and programs. On I-81, the global amount or value of all the projects was $4 billion. The corridor jurisdictions now have a regional gas tax similar to ours, which goes towards debt service, and they get the largest portion of the Interstate Operations and Enhancement Fund. But those funding tools, well, plus smart scale money, those funding tools were only able to fund $2 billion worth of projects. What we're now seeing coming from that delegation and the administration, frankly, is wanting to do a deep dive and figure out, one, how to accelerate the phase one $2 billion group of projects, and how quickly can they move to the second $2 billion worth of projects. There is money proposed in the budget. It is unclear because the House Appropriations language describes the project a little differently than the Senate does. So I'm not quite sure they're the same money, same project. In the House, there's designated $150 million in general funds for FY 2024. In the Senate, included $250 million in contingency funds for 2024 out of unobligated balances for FY 2023. The Senate has a list of about 7 or 8 initiatives for the unobligated funds at the end of fiscal year 2023, and I-81 is the 4th priority. Both budgets continue the $500,000 in general fund money that in FY 2024, that's in the governor's introduced budget, which is for have VDOT and the commissioner examine whether a PPTA procurement process would be helpful in accelerating completing of I-81 projects. General fund money in the Senate, transportation funds in the House, and then both budgets include another unique project that has a lot of support, which is the idea of building a new inland port in the Mount Rogers Planning District. There was a study done looking at 2 different planning districts. Mount Rogers was deemed to be the most efficient and effective in building better port to distribution to final customer delivery. And so the Port Authority is leading this effort. The Senate is dedicating $10 million in FY 2024 for preliminary engineering. The House, earmarks $10 million in FY 2023 and $45 million in 2024, which is probably a good chunk of what might be needed to both do the preliminary engineering, final engineering and design, and a good chunk of building it. Ms. Bachman and I wanted to highlight a trend that, frankly, I am surprised that they keep doing. These are projects that they're not taking out of the Commonwealth Transportation Fund or the Mass Transit Fund. They're not coming out of dedicated transportation revenues, but they are coming out of general fund.
Okay,
I think what I would like is for us to see how this ends up, and then within ourselves have a conversation about what this is doing on transportation, what this means for us as a region and certainly individual localities, that these unique large-scale projects are just popping up out of general fund.
okay, thank you. Any questions on that? Okay,
The other couple of things, because I know there's been a lot of discussion around issues about the bills on the transit ridership incentive program and the bills that would expand use of trip funds for transit facility riders, transit facilities for riders, bus shelters, benches, ADA compliance, and also open up for zero or low emission vehicle transition activities. The bills are I think they're pretty identical now, and they say that no more than 30% of the trip funds could be used for those initiatives. These bills were strongly supported by Department of Rail and Public Transportation. The Senate budget goes further in budget language to confirm that funding of up to 30% means up to 7.7 million in FY 2024. The bill becomes effective July 1, 2023. So as you all are continuing to work through your efforts on bus shelters, bus stops, improvements, ADA compliance, and also zero and low emission low emission vehicles, there now will be some there'll be some money out of TRIP that can be dedicated to that. Any questions about that? Those bills are passing. The House bill passed 64-35, and the Senate bill, strangely enough, passed on a party line vote. I'm not really sure what happened on that. The other big discussion point, which we're seeing some differences, but some general agreement, is the Transportation Partnership Opportunity Fund. As I alerted everyone early in the session, the administration wants to recapitalize that program and have flexible money outside of Smart Scale that is used to either provide money for transportation projects for economic development opportunities or to enhance sites to make them more attractive for economic development. The General Assembly as a body, both House and Senate have made significant changes in the bill to require, one, to take out the automatic appropriation that was in the introduced bill of $200 million out of the Commonwealth Transportation Fund. Both have inserted significantly more General Assembly reporting and possibly oversight. The bills will have to be reconciled. The General Assembly, by and large, bipartisanly accepts the idea of having flexible money, transportation money for economic development, but felt the bills needed a lot more reporting back to and possibly true oversight from the General Assembly. And so the bills either have reports to the chairs of House and Senate Transportation Committees, House Appropriations, House Finance, report to the chair of the Major Economic Investment Commission, MEI, and for them to either just get the notice or get the notice and have to sign off. CTB is back in. So the governor recommends to Secretaries of Commerce and Trade and Transportation, but CTB still has the responsibility of programming that funding in the 6-year plan. The administration has been pretty flexible on the changes that have been made. I think they were very eager to get the bills on the floor and passed, but there's still some work to go to figure out exactly what the accountability and transparency framework will be. From a funding perspective, so the introduced budget the governor proposed $100 million in FY 2024 from the Virginia Transportation Infrastructure Bank. This is funding that's unobligated. Both budgets still contain that. He also proposed $100 million in FY 2023 and $100 million in FY 2024 out of the Commonwealth Transportation Fund. The House has kept that, but the Senate has not. The Senate has reduced that to a specifically one-time transfer out of the Commonwealth Transportation Fund of $100 million. So once again, that'll have to be reconciled in the budget. And as you all recall, we were and have been quite concerned about what's going to be the long-term impact on dedicated transportation revenue because of the loss of the 0.5% of the grocery sales and use tax. As you recall, they replaced the funding for local government, as well they should, but there was no backfill for transportation. I'm happy to say the Senate budget does include language that we have wanted to see, calling for the Commonwealth Transportation Board to report annually, starting in November of 2023, on what is going on with transportation funding, both short-term and long-term sustainability. And those reports are being given to House Appropriations, Senate Finance and Appropriations, and the House and Senate Transportation Committees. So that was a lot, but I just wanted to sort of give you some highlights of some of the things I think long-term bear watching implementation of as we move forward. Any questions?
Yes.
Hi, Tracy, it's Mary Hines.
Hi.
So appreciate all the back and forth that's going on with this TPOF proposal. In all of them, is the CTB kind of just the rubber stamp at the end that puts the money as an insert into the SIP? As you understand it?
Yeah, I do. As I understand, I'm trying to bring up my copy of the bill. The CTB has the role that it always has in terms of approval of the 6-year plan.
Right.
Because these projects have to be put into the 6-year plan.
But there's not a separate vote that's required each time something is expended. We have that on another economic development related program.
Yeah, I know. So you're right. What you have with like the rail programs and VDOT ones, you all get the list of, you get a project presentation and then you take a separate vote.
Right.
The way this reads, let me go. Well, you're going to have, you're back to developing guidelines. So because of the change in the policy, you will undertake that for CTV.
Okay.
And let me see if I can find this real quick. Some civilly awarded, blah, blah, blah. Established by the board, duration of loan or grants. The governor may direct funds, this is in the House version, and also the Senate version. The governor may direct funds from the fund, TPOF, to the board for transportation projects determined to be necessary to support major economic development initiatives or to enhance the economic development opportunities of the Commonwealth's transportation programs when recommended by blah, 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 blah. So Mary, because you all are going to be, CTB does get to write the guidelines for the changes in policy. I see no reason that you couldn't treat it like the other ones and that comes to you as a separate one. Because I think the idea is that it's flexible, so it may not always come up when you're approving the 6-year plan. Does that make sense?
You know, we make changes to the 6-year plan every month.
Yeah, yes.
There are puts and takes every month in that plan. So it's just really, you know, it's been such a, so they want us to develop the criteria.
The board, in consultation with the Secretary of Transportation and Commerce and Trade, this is existing code that's not being changed, shall develop guidelines and criteria that shall be used in awarding grants or making loans from the fund. And then the currently in code, you know, no no grant should be more than 5 million, no loan shall exceed 30.
So they're not changing those limits.
The House has not.
That's really interesting because it kind of doesn't align with their goal very well. Okay, well, thank you for that. I don't want to drag everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, Mary, I will say that I expect some of this to continue to be tweaked.
Mhm.
But I am very comfortable that it would be, it's more about, do we have the right streamlined reporting and transparency and relate to the General Assembly? The issue of CTB involvement is, I don't think that's going to change, at least not by the General Assembly.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my colleagues would just as soon not be in this business. We don't have information to help us evaluate any of it. It just comes in. On the
Yeah.
road stuff, it's better, but on the road stuff, it's pretty impossible to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Because they're usually deals too. I mean, they're not always, it's like, you know, they're bringing it to bear at a time when you can't even talk about who's coming.
Right. Yes. I mean, that is absolutely a challenge on, well, it's certainly a challenge on, I would say, an active economic development opportunity like Amazon was. What I think will be interesting for you all to have a discussion about, Mary, is the new policy wrinkle of being able to use this money to enhance a site to make it more attractive for economic development. And that's a change.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, we are allowed to spend money to put a road to a site that's undeveloped. There say so that something's coming,
Right.
but there's a payback if it doesn't come.
Correct. And again, there's no reason there can't be a payback. I think it doesn't preclude a payback in the proposed code section, but again, it goes back to guidelines and procedures that you all adopt.
Right, right. Well, people don't like to pay back. Say that.
No, but it is a necessary tool.
Thank you, Tracy.
Well, you'll be reporting out tonight to the full committee, right? The MBT commission. So just rest your voice, have some tea.
Okay.
And I'm sure there'll be more questions tonight with tons more people in the room. So thank you for that, though. And this is a short session, correct?
Yes, February 25th is sine die. Please keep to that schedule.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll cross our fingers for that. Well, thank you. And we will talk to you later. We'll bring you in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Because we still don't have a quorum, we can't take any action, at least on the approval of the minutes or the meeting dates, but that doesn't really seem to matter too much. So we did get an update. I think that's about it then. Do we have anything for closed session? Nothing for closed session. Okay, well, with that, we can adjourn the GPC meeting and take these up on our next meeting, which is March 9th.